So now you got all your assets imported into Unity and you want to know how to upload it if it's causing errors and not actually containing a prefab for upload. So we just have our base FPX in here. Obviously I just dragged it from the bottom into here. I do recommend right clicking your model and clicking unpack prefab completely. A few things we'll need is the avatar descriptor. Usually auto detect will work fine if the model is set up properly in Blender. If not, I will go over that in a future video. I do not like Blender, but I will have to show it if I'm doing a series on this. iLook, usually you can just look up the eye bones. Obviously I'm going to have duplicates here because I have 3 different versions in this scene. You can always create new scenes if that's an issue, but usually the last one will always be the right one when it's always a new avatar in your scene. As for looking in your directions here, you want to make sure that looking up will be your X value. It should be -15. Looking down will usually be 15, and then usually on your Z axis this will be -15. Oh, no. Apparently it's the Y axis this time. -15 for looking left, and regular 15 for looking right. Cool. We're not going to worry about eyelids on this one. This model does include it, but I'm not really worried about it. The whole eye movements things, that just tells how often your eyes will wander onto new targets. You can hover over these and they will explain. Well, actually, apparently it doesn't anymore. Never mind, I'll explain right now. So shy will make it so it doesn't change targets of who is looking at often. Confident means it'll change targets more often. Calm and excited will be how fast it changes target. So these will choose how often it switches target, and then this will be how fast it goes to a target and how long it stays on one target. I don't know. They're both kind of similar things. They both do slightly different things. They're very similar. But yeah, we're going to go to playable layers. We're going to expand it. We want actually a custom FX layer because we want to do, well, actually I'll do toggles in the next video. We're not going to worry about now. I usually force locomotion animations for 6-1 tracking off, because you don't want your walking animations to override your full body if you have full body. As for auto footsteps for 3 and 4 port tracking, that's just if you're in VR, do you want it to have custom walking animations or the defaults? I don't know. It's up to you. Usually both on is really good. If you only use your model in full body, you can have both off, but we're fine with that. As for expressions, menu and parameters, we'll go over that when we do toggles. So all this stuff here we'll go over when we do toggles, but this is just the basics here. As for the actual model itself, you have all these options here. Let's see, what are we actually going to cover in this video? Let's see, this video will be about, let's see, we forgot the viewpoint. So you can do the viewpoint multiple ways. I usually like to just grab the little red cube. I know it's a little hard to see, but it allows you to just drag it in there nice and quick. My recommendation for getting in here is you want to line up the red line with the center of your pupil, right? And then you want to drag it about 1/3 into your eyeball. So right about there should be good. And then you want to just take your X position and hit 0, and that will center it into the middle of your avatar. And if you have full body and whatnot, this will usually be perfectly fine for tracking. Otherwise, if worlds have bad near clipping, it's whatever. There's not much you can do about that. Obviously, you can go through your model and remove things you don't want. So like say if I don't want the hat, right? There's 2 different ways you can remove it. You can either hide it at the top right in the inspector, which will temporarily remove it. It'll still be uploaded with the model, it just won't be visible. Or if you want to get rid of it completely, you can actually just delete it. Of course, you have a fresh FBX down here, or you can also right click on your model and hit duplicate. Just have a backup as well, just in case there's things you don't want to get rid of or want to go back to. As for the skirt, obviously I can just delete that if I don't like it. We have the shorts, whatever. We have, I don't like shoes on models, I find them weird. If you're wondering why the feet are clipping here, is this one actually has blend shapes on the right. So we can actually shrink the feet or not. Yes, because we'd have to shrink those and the part on the garter belts. Blink. There we go. And now the shoes fit properly. All models will do their shape keys and blend shapes differently. Shape keys are blend shapes just on the Blender side if you're wondering. As for these, I could just undo those and go to our shoes, and I could just delete them. We don't need them on the model. Because why use them, right? I could also just remove the ears on this version. It might look a little odd. Actually, no, I will keep the ears because I will do later tutorial parts on that. Yes. Let's see what to do next. I guess I should show the basics of dynamic bones. I don't know, I'm making a tutorial here. I don't really know what I'm doing. Jeez. Well, I know what I want to do. I just don't know which order I should do things. So if you're doing dynamic bones, usually you want to go to your head bone. You could either do it the shortcut way by just putting one dynamic bone on the head bone, dragging it from the head in the hierarchy to your inspector tab into the root. And as you see, it'll create a bunch of really, really tiny lines. I don't know how well you guys can see that because I know I only have it in 720p right now. But we want to add some exclusions to this because we don't want the eyes to move and we don't want the actual head bone to move. Otherwise, it's going to be a very floopy avatar. So there's 3 things we want to remove. So we'll put size of 3 and drag the head bone in there, the left eye in the next one, and the right eye in the one below it. Then that will actually make sure that the eyes don't move with the dynamic bones and the head itself doesn't become all floopy. As for colliders, I usually recommend doing 2, 1 on each hand. I don't know, you don't really need to do a lot. We'll put it for 2 and we'll add them a little bit later. But right now, if you want to collide with it, or if you want to even test your settings for your dynamic bones, you can hit play, go into your scene, select your model in the top left of your hierarchy, and if you move it around, you notice the hair moves a little bit. It's very jank dynamic bone settings. They're very oof, right? But those are the default settings. Obviously, we move in stuff in play mode because any modifications you make in play mode will not be saved. And there is a few tricks to get your settings back, but I will show that in a future video. Okay, so let's actually modify these dynamic bones. Now, let's add colliders to the hands. Yes, colliders to the hand sounds nice. Let's go to our shoulders. Let's go to our lower arm, our hand. I usually recommend doing it on the middle. We'll go over to add component. We'll go dynamic bone collider. And I usually set this to 1/10 of what size it's supposed to be. Yeah, it's still too big, so let's go to even smaller than that, about half. We'll increase the height to, I don't know, 0.1? 0.12. I don't know. We just want to just barely encapsulate the whole hand. Obviously, this will be moving with the middle finger, not the rest of the hand. You could do your little noodle dynamic bones in other ways if you want. Also, if you're wondering how these work, this is a cylinder, not actually just 2 balls. There's actually connections between the 2 points from left to right. So the whole thing is just a spherical cylinder. Enjoy. As for the dynamic bone collider, we can actually click at the little 3 dots at the top right, click copy components. We can go over to our right middle finger, and we can actually just paste component as new at the top right there on the 3 dots. Now when we go over to our head bone, there we go. We have the 2 colliders there. There's 2 different ways we can do this. We can either hit the dot on the right and try to find it within there, or we can actually just drag it from the hierarchy onto there. So I'll do the dragging onto there. It's a little bit easier since we have so many colliders on the other models. Jeez. But yeah, once that's in there, now our hands will actually be able to collide, except we actually have to set the collider size for our dynamic bones. So there's a little radius section. 0.1 is way too big. Let's do 0.2. 0.2 seems to be fine. I do usually recommend doing distribution curves. You don't have to, but there's a lot of fine detail you can get that wouldn't normally be the case. Obviously, we want the center of the parts on the hair here to be a little bit thicker, and then the other parts to be a little bit thinner. If you want your hair to collide with your body, you can always just put a collider on your body, like on your head, so your hair doesn't phase through it, and then just add it to your collider section. Other than that, that's the basics for how to create dynamic bones and uploading your model so it still looks like, I don't know, silly string. I don't know. Looks weird when you don't use custom settings for dynamic bones. I don't know. I'll go over all that stuff in a later video when all the settings do and everything. Wait, no, well, yes, no, yes, no. I'm gonna scrap this video.